Okay, we're recording live now, and leftovers from last week. Last week we talked about store what you eat and eat what you store. And anybody have any comments about that as a motto?
It's a perfect motto. And unfortunately, we have stored things that we might eat, and we're not doing very well eating what we might eat. So we got to balance that out.
Yeah, that seems to be always a problem, and with that, with food storage in general. And, so tonight we're going to talk about kind of the opposite of that, but in growing what you eat and eating what you grow. And so, but before that, I want to start off with a video to kind of get us our financial advice from Patera instead of from a financial guru today, because she's going to talk about the wisdom of her grandmothers and stuff. And I think that may be what we need tonight. So let's see here.
Mama's checking it out. Look at Graham, guys. He's a big boy. Oh my goodness. Hey, they're trying to start nursing their mama. They are trying to start nursing her a little bit. They're pushing on her teats. And Graham got onto the teat by himself this morning. So there's hope. But in the meantime, oh my goodness. In the meantime, everybody, we're going to keep bottle feeding. And Mama's helping out. She's a good girl, Mama. She's a good girl. Good Mama. Love your babies, Mama. Love your babies. Let's sip. Let's sip. Good job. Good job. So hey guys, welcome to Appalachia's Homestead. Welcome back to the channel. Hope you're having a fabulous Monday afternoon. I'm sure you are busy. Very, very busy. Hope you had a great weekend. We had our anniversary weekend this past weekend, 10 full years of being on YouTube. My channel is officially 10 years old now. And I just want to thank you for all of the support. Several of you have been here since the beginning, and most of you have been here for at least several years. We do always have new faces, so it's always nice because you can tell who's been here a while or a long time, and you all just nurture and take in all the new folks. And I just appreciate your support, not only for me and my channel, but for the other folks that are here as well. We are a community. So there's a lot to talk about. I'm about to go give an afternoon bottle, so I'm just going to film here real quick because I've had to shower. I've worked so hard outside. It got so disgusting. I'm going to get disgusting again. That's okay, but it's like you just go, we got to do something about it, right? But I've sort of sat back a little bit and I'm watching what's going on with the stock market. I'm not a financial advisor or guru or anything like that. Don't claim to be, and I know I'm not. So I try to come at all of these types of things with a common sense approach. How long have I been saying that you are in a depression? I mean, I haven't gone through my video content to put an actual date on it, but considering we are into August of 24, I'm going to argue and say that I've been saying that you are in a depression for at least a year and a half. Yeah. So today we're hearing the talk of a recession. The odds of a coming recession have now increased 25%. I actually did horse laugh that. I think all of you did too. And I've posted already on some of my social media. I was like, where you been, right? It goes back to that whole idea of, and we've said this, you've said it, you know it, I'm preaching to the choir here. when they tell you that you are in a when they tell you that you are either in or going into a recession, you might want to look around a little bit, because you're probably in a depression. Now, I based my opinion, and I'm just going by my discernment. I base that upon the fact that they have changed, and you know this as well as I do, and many of you are so well versed in this. Amazing comments from you guys. You know, they changed the way they do they figure the numbers. You know, funny math. It's kind of like Common Core math, you know, like when you're in the public school system. Yeah, it works real well. If you really put it on a true scale to scale of who's not working, they haven't been working, so that's unemployment, which is ticked up. No way. If you really look at the numbers and you really looked at the true inflation, where would we be? I mean, we have talked about this, I know for a fact, for 3 full years. We've talked about things, all kinds of different issues sprinkled in and out, you know, the fiber of the channel for the last 10 years. But I know for a fact, since the vid, we've really hit in on a lot of various topics. So here's what I want to say to you. I've said for a long time, I think we're in a silent depression, and nobody's changing my mind on that. It is a matter of who, what, when, where, how, and why they pull the plug on us. And that is a concern of mine. Again, I will say to you again that my biggest fear is, it's almost like if certain individuals don't get exactly what they want from us, then they pull the plug. Okay. I honestly think that is literally how vulnerable the economy is. And for a long time, I've been saying this is actually, you know, there's several and multiple, we talk about different issues all the time: homestead, political, cooking, kids, homeschool. We talk about all kinds of things, but the bottom line is the economy affects all of us. The economy affects, well, in the homesteading world, before we get to the what else I want to talk about, a lot of people have totally pulled back on being able to buy a house or land, which means they're not able to be as self-reliant as they want to be, because they haven't been able to afford housing. They haven't been able to afford extra land. That doesn't mean you can't do things, but the possibility of growing in your self-sustainability has kind of been whopped out underneath you. That affects you, whether you want to be political or not. That affects you. And it's been horrific to watch what we have been through over the last 2 to 3 years. Okay, I really think that you're watching the middle class being just broke across its back and brought to its knees. I've said that many times. And all the while, you're being lied to. What happened to this great economy? Oh, I mean, just a couple of weeks ago and even a couple of months ago, you know, certain individuals all across the board would say, oh, the economy, it's just booming. It's doing great. Really? Show me where. Tell me how. And don't use funny math in order to justify your agenda. That's how I think about it. So I don't have to come at this from a sense of looking at scales and this, and if this dips, buy this and do that. I go back to what is common sense. So this is how I approach it. Let me ask you a question, because I'm going to ask it. We're just going to be very simple, stupid, and I like it. I like being simple, stupid. What do you think? What do you think in my case, it would be my great-great-grandparents, my great-great-grandmother. I had her till I was 16 years old, and was very close to her as a child, my best friend. She was born in Telco Plains in 1901. Telco Plains, Tennessee, honey. And the family had just come over from Cherokee County, literally in North Carolina. And so I had this influence, and if I could just grab her and just have her for a minute, one of the first things, I'd hug her neck off, as you know, and love on her. But if I could ask her several questions, one of them would be, tell me, what would you do had you have known what was coming? In other words, you were alive, you were a young woman, married, had a child, etc., And while you were as poor as all get out, you probably wouldn't change anything. But even if you could have changed anything, or maybe, gotten something or done something different prior to the Great Depression, what would that be? Now, again, we're talking about 1928, 1929. That's a long time ago versus life was different to now. I get that. But I want you to apply that logic to yourself right now. And I've said this before, but I think I just think that it's the most common sense based approach. Folks, they can only hide so much from you for so long. And of course, when things come to the light and of course are being revealed, of course they use projection and then they blame you. It's your fault the economy's bad. Now, if you've made bad decisions in terms of your finances in your personal world, that may be true. But am I personally at fault for what we're seeing going on with the economy? In most cases, no. People are going along with what they can and what they should do. They go to work, they're trying to raise their kids, they're trying to afford basic groceries, they're trying to just be a healthy and happy, decent life. But that's gotten harder and harder, not only globally, but also here in the United States as well. So I want to ask you, and I can absolutely pop off a ginormous list of things, but in your scenario, even if you have been preparing, if you could have 5 minutes to think out, what do you think in my case, it would be my great-great-grandparents. My great-grandmother was a teenager, so see, she was young, but she might even have had some really good advice. What would you do different that you have not been doing to prepare you for what's, well, in essence, what is here? But again, when they start talking the language, which you are now officially seeing today, this is their way of kind of going, to me, this is the gate has been opened. The media is talking about it. Your mama's talking about it. You already know it. But again, now that you see that next step, which has just now happened, your red flag should be just waving in your face like crazy. Now, everybody's circumstances are different, so my advice or your advice is not going to apply to everyone, but the main advice that I like to give here is take 5 to 10 minutes, take a deep breath, don't panic. There's no sense in panicking, okay, because that's just going to slow you down and paralyze you in all the things that you need to accomplish, okay? I don't know about you, but here's what's so funny. Last week, if you were watching, I said you better make August your busiest month ever. And I said you don't have 100 days. That's not me pushing back on the idea of, things are going to happen right at the election. I have a different approach on this. I think things are going to happen prior to the election, which is why I said you don't have 100 days. And woe and behold, here we are, 5 days later, and look what just happened. Now, is the world on fire? Well, in the UK, it kind of is. Are you keeping up with that? Just going to sprinkle that in there. We need to definitely keep up with that with our brothers and sisters across the pond, because what's going on over there is probably coming here. Well, okay, it's already here. See, they're just ahead of schedule in terms of the clash. That clash is going to sweep across the pond here, and because we have too many things that could pop off at any moment. War is obviously something we've been discussing for a long time, for 2.5 years in different ways. Now we're watching what's happening with Iran and Israel. What? See, all of these things, all the unemployment, inflation, the Fed, the election, war, all of this stuff is intricately related like a beautiful piece of lace. And so therefore you have to understand that one thing can pop off another, but the economy is definitely a leverage right over every single one of us. So I want you on this Monday to please, I'm not telling you specifically to go buy 5 cans today, although I tell you that every time I can. No pun intended, I can. But what I am saying is I want you to logically think about What do you think your grandparents would say for you to do right now if they knew, okay, we went through this experience, which lasted most people? Well, the folks in Appalachia, a lot of the mountain people were so poor, they didn't even know a depression was going on for several years. It didn't affect them, but eventually it did. You're talking about the Great Depression happening by the end of 29, and we did not officially come out of a depression until after World War II. How many years is that? How many years is that? 29 to basically 1940, almost basically 46. That's 16, 17 roughly on the years there. Now, can you stockpile food that's going to last you 17 years? If you can, hallelujah, praise the Lord, God love you, please be my best friend, and you are a better person than me. So think logically on what can you do to push you forward in a time frame, because frankly, I think a depression or a collapse that we could see is going to be massively globally, and is going to be uglier than anything anybody experienced during the Great Depression. We've talked about that before. People are not as loyal to each other. People do not have the same morality, and neighbors don't work together like they used to. It's a different world. So you have to also think about that in those terms. I mean, it's easy for me to sit here and say, you know, beans, rice, Band-Aids, self-defense, medications, of course, okay, of course. But I want to say this again, and I've said it many times. Any and every opportunity that you can take in order to become debt, to free yourself of debt, to hold on to your job, you better be putting that first. Now, obviously, prior to any of this, I'm going to tell you to get right with God and just turn it over to Jesus. But I'm pretty sure right after that, I think Jesus would say, yep, please do your best to set yourself up for what is coming, what is here. But you're just not feeling the full effects yet. Because when the pendulum swings and it swings down, it's going to literally wipe out a lot of people. So being as financially set as you can. I'm not saying you have to be a millionaire, okay? And it may take a lot of sacrifice on your part. Believe me, I know. But you have to do it. Focus as best you can in terms of several different things, becoming and being as debt-free as possible, okay? Okay? As far as your living situation, if you're not the person that people can come with in case they lose their jobs or things get really bad, try your best to have something like that in place. I have said for the last 2 years that multi-generational living is not just making its way back, it's going to be the only way a lot of people are going to be able to make it. This is why I focus so hard on certain things here, because I feel my place, my little place for my family is, well, I think it's going to be the spot. And it makes the most sense because of what we do. Are you that person? So yes, I want you canning. Do the best that you can with your gardens. Do the best that you can with grabbing foods. Now, here's the thing. Like I said, you're like, well, I can't survive a 15-year depression. Well, here's the thing. If you can set yourself up for being set in terms of basic foods, basic water, medications, even if it's just for 6 months, you are buying time. Now, there's also the talk in terms of assets. I'm not going to tell you what to do as far as that goes, because I have my opinions. A lot of people can only do so much. I will tell you, I don't think silver is a bad shake. I don't think silver is a bad shake for you. And it's still fairly affordable for most people. You may only be able to buy 1 or 2 pieces a month. It's better than nothing. Let it add up. Ask the people that watched my video over 2 years ago, and I challenged you. It's over 2 years ago. I said, just start buying 5 cans of foods, put them on the shelf. Put 5 cans a week. How many cans do those people have now? And you know, of course, you can still, at this point, eat them. You can freeze dry them. My backup is if it gets to the point where I'm not comfortable necessarily eating it, it's kind of, no, depending on the situation, I've got chickens that can eat it. So see, or you might have pigs that can eat it. This all relates. I don't want to get on a tangent here. Sit yourself down, take a deep breath, say a prayer, and think about, well, ask the Lord what he wants you to do, of course. But also in that, I like to go, what would Granny tell me to do? And I think she would tell me to be as dedicated as I could to get my house in order and to be as debt-free as possible, to try to have a nest egg of some sort several months, as far as you can go, sweetheart. Okay? And all along the way, along the while, be picking up and shopping in the best places that you can afford to stockpile foods away. There's endless videos everywhere on couponing and different things like that. Although I don't see the coupons that we used to see, say 10, 12 years ago, but there are still things you can do out there. Okay? Think of all the things, because they just told you today it's coming. You've known it's coming. You know it's here. But officially, they've started the conversation of recession. And remember what we've said. We've said it already here too. When they finally admit to you that you are at this point, you are going to be, the reality is that you are so much worse off, most likely, than they've ever been able to admit to you. And they can't, because it's a political year. What happens when this election is over? Regardless of how it goes, where will we be with the economy in 6 months? And will you be able to handle it? That's up to you. A lot of this is up to you. I hope this video finds you well. I know that it is an incredibly stressful conversation. This is why I've been talking about it for, like I said, the last 2 to 3 years strongly, because we knew this was coming at some point. It's going to continue to come like a freight train. Exactly when, I don't know. I hope that it holds off as long as possible. As long as you are willing to accept what you need to accept today. The more time we have, the crash might be harder, but in your personal world, it might give you more time to be more prepared. Don't waste a minute. Please don't waste a minute. Every day makes something count. I'm praying for you. I'm praying for this great country, our beautiful nation. And guys, they're not hiding anything from you anymore. They're just not. Nothing's, they project. They try to tell you you're stupid and you're weird and, you know, you're all of these things and all the name calling all across the board, because all they want to talk about is women's rights. They're not really answering any other questions.
Okay, so wanted to play that before we went over the markets and things today. And so back over to here. So I don't know how many of y'all follow the markets on a daily basis or whatever, but the markets were mostly up today after yesterday's the end of the world, so to speak. And what Patera was talking about with the Great Depression lasting for like 17 years, I think she said. Well, what started everything rolling yesterday was Japan and their stock market, which was down 12% in one day. But I'd just like to bring up that, you know, what happened yesterday is what I've been trying to prepare people for the last 3 years. Of course, I thought it was going to happen a lot before this, but I think we're finally here. And Japan was last at 38,000 on their stock market in 1989, December 3rd, 1989. Okay, and they just last week we're back to 38,000 where they crashed from in 1989. So that's like 33 years to get back to even. If you'd been holding on all this time, that's a generation, folks. And that's what I want to try to convince you to make a decision on. And maybe you haven't done anything yet as far as protecting your portfolio, protecting your retirement. And maybe you only have a 401k where you don't have a lot of options. You won't be able to pick the individual stocks or ETFs that I'm going to talk about tonight. But if you've got an old IRA from a previous employer, you know, I've been suggesting that you roll it into a brokerage account, that into an IRA where you can actually have some control and be able to protect yourself from what may be coming. Because you know, you go back to what was happening you know, in 2020, the COVID crisis. Most people lost 25 to 35% of their retirement that time. And the other thing, the big mistake that I made during that time is I was fully invested before that. So I had to, I didn't think I needed to sell things because I thought I was well positioned in a diversified portfolio. But you know, when it dropped 35%, I didn't have anything to put into the market to buy all the bargains. So, you know, it's been, you know, 3 or 4 years now, and I'm still not back up to where I was then. So the two things I want to encourage you to do is protect yourself by moving out of the general market, and second, to raise cash so you'll be able to do something when the time comes. You'll have something to do it with. So this week is the week. So have you started? If not now, then when? You know, I don't think you have more than 90 days with the election coming up, but could hold off, like Tara said, it could hold off longer than that. And you know, don't panic. I mean, if you haven't done anything yet, there's still time. I mean, this may change the things you go into at this point, since we're further down the track. So with that said, gold was up a couple of dollars today at $23.91. Goldbacks were exactly at 473, the same place they were last week. Silver was down a few cents today at 26.95. Gold silver ratio is still awfully high, which would tend to make you buy silver instead of gold at this point. But I think we will still probably see, you know, $25 silver again. So there'll be opportunities. Don't rush out. Tilton Zeros, the long-term bond funds, they were about the only thing in my portfolio that was up yesterday. Of course, they're down $2 today. So it's a very volatile market. Wheat was up a couple of pennies today. It's 507 today. And here's another one that is extremely cheap. And if you can get wheat for under $5 a bushel, I don't see how you can possibly go wrong. And the other one that you might consider is PDBA, which is an ETF that invests in agricultural commodities. And it was up a little bit today, down yesterday, but up today. And this is going to pay a 6% dividend projected in December. They only pay a dividend once a year. So this is something I would highly recommend that you get before December to at least collect that 6% dividend. We're getting into an environment where it's more important to get a return of your capital as opposed to return on your capital. That's the thing you need to be careful on.
Now, Winston, what's the PDB and
PDBC is
PDBC?
more of a generalized commodity with precious metals and a lot of energy stuff in it. And it's not been doing that well because we might actually go into a deflationary period if the economy gets bad enough. XAR, military industrial complex, that's XAR is a ETF that invest in all of these stocks listed here, plus others. The 14 top military industrial stocks. It was actually up today, and GE was up today. But when these guys pull back, I mean, I think we're guaranteed that we're guaranteed and we're prophesied that we're going to have food shortages and wars and rumors of wars. So if you're going to stay in the market, these 3 or 4 here might be a way to stay in the market and yet make some money actually, or at least hedge your portfolio. So natural gas was, I'm not sure I actually checked that today, didn't update it, but natural gas has been going up a little bit while oil's been going down, and they will meet in the middle someplace for the amount of energy that each one of them has. And I expect oil's going to come down considerably for it, and which with oil coming down, that's a big indication of a recession. So Bitcoin was up a little bit today after it had a terrible day yesterday. Over the weekend is up to 56,000 today. And so whichever form you want to invest in, it might be a good time to get in some dollar cost averaging. Talked about before that the state of Wisconsin invested in 2 Bitcoin ETFs, and other states will probably follow. And there are now 8 new ETFs for Ethereum. And ever since those have opened trading, Ethereum has gone down. It was back up a little bit today at 2506, but that's like $1,000 less than it was last week at this time. So if you were interested 2 weeks ago when Ethereum and Bitcoin were looking at shooting the moon, what about now when it's on sale 20% cheaper? Might want to think about that. So the not so rumors of wars in the Middle East. The Middle East is kind of on fire right now. What Patera was alluding to, the UK is having lots of riot problems, which she's thinking will come here in the election or before. We have a war on fossil fuels, a war on the middle class, especially in food, medicine, and housing, a war on cash. This is something I talk about, that you should use cash whenever possible, just so it will be available to us as long as possible. It will go away. Fed has plans right after the election to take it away or make it not acceptable in many places. So there's a war on food, a war on gardens in many places, a war on meat. Law was passed to require all cows to be chipped so they'll know exactly where they're at all times. War on cancer, of course, in my opinion, has been surrendered. So anybody have any comments on this crazy list that I just spewed at you?
Yeah, Winston, I had a comment. This is Lyle.
Yeah.
And comparing Ethereum and Bitcoin, is it possible that, say, if Bitcoin took off and became the major currency, could it make Ethereum worth nothing, or what's your opinion on the different
Well, I would say invest a small part of your portfolio in both of them, just because it gives you another amount of diversity.
Mhm.
I don't think Ethereum's going away because it's used for a lot of different things besides just monetary transactions. Its blockchain is, different than Bitcoin's blockchain, and it's probably a little more amenable to to be programmed transactions as opposed to just sending Bitcoins back and forth. So
Okay.
I wouldn't go down the list any further than that, probably. Just those two. There's thousands of them out there, and most of them will die worthless, I'm sure. But some of them you can make 100%, 1,000% overnight, but you're taking a tremendous risk once you get beyond these two, I think. It's my opinion.
Okay, thank you.
So anyway, let's talk about seasonal information right now. And we got it's time to order your trees if you're going to plant trees this fall. Think about propagation of some of your existing plants and trees. We did a session on air layering a couple of weeks ago, and still got time to do that. It's time to plant your fall garden, which we'll talk about a little bit today. I planted some things today that might not think would make it, but theoretically they should. I planted sweet corn today, just because I planted regular corn and I didn't get a good stand, so I came back and planted sweet corn in all the skips, which were mostly skips.
So is sweet corn a 60-day or a 90-day crop?
What was that you cut out?
Oh, I was asking, is sweet corn a 60-day or a 90-day crop?
Well, it depends on which variety. The variety I planted, I think, was about 65 days, and for sweet corn, and I've got another reason for planting it, for its medicinal value of the corn silks, and so I can harvest it at at Roastoneer and harvest the corn silks at the same time, and I think I'll be okay as long as we don't have a early frost, and everybody's projecting a warm winter, so maybe we won't have a frost until November this year, the way things been kind of looking in the models. So we'll see. And then the other thing I planted was whippoorwill peas, which was my favorite pea from my youth, and I didn't have but a few seeds that I had from a little crop that I planted last year, and so I was going to hopefully get those to multiply my seed bank. And those should be under 60 days also, so they'll be fine, I think. So we should be harvesting, but it's been so hot and dry, there's not that much coming out of our garden anyway. The tomato plants are just staying alive. Hopefully this rain that we're projected to get will bring them back up. I did see some of the volunteer plants were blooming profusely out there right now, so maybe they will set tomatoes. And we'll have tomatoes going into the fall as long as they stay alive. So you got bees, they need some attention now probably. It's a good time to order seeds for next year, if not this year. Somebody just told me that the local co-op had last year's seeds on sale for 25 cents a packet. And that's such a bargain. I mean, $3.25 here a packet from Seeds and Such was pretty good price, but 25 cents. I'll take a year-old seed for that. And always stress that people should have their potassium iodine just in case. And anybody know about using kelp as a substitute for that? Kelp, which contains a lot of iodine, is good for your health in general. So I'm not sure whether it's good for a nuclear event, but something you should probably be have on stock and be taking daily anyway. So might keep your thyroid from sucking in a lot of bad iodine if it ever came to that. So now it's the point where we share any progress that anybody would like to talk about. Anybody been doing anything good in the last week to get you along in your preparations?
I canned some peaches.
You did, at least twice.
I was able to get a unique variety. It was called John Boy. Oh my goodness. Those were absolutely delightful. The flavor, the sweetness, it woke me up when I was working with them late in the evening.
There's a picture of the last batch.
Those are beautiful.
Anyway. And Liz used the steam canner this year, and I think last year too, but it speeds up the process using steam canner versus having to fill a full water bath or a pressure canner. So cool down a lot quicker afterwards, and so you can cycle through these a lot faster than using a, 10 quarts of water or whatever.
I built a fire pit this week, mainly because I am trying to understand how to cook over wood. If anybody has any suggestions, because I built it, but I'm not sure, like the finer points of, when the lights go out, there's no electricity, the generators run dry, of how to really cook. So we're trying to start cooking on the weekends over the fire, but does anybody have any suggestions or pointers or books or anything they point to?
Is this Deborah?
It is. Hi.
Okay. I can't see right now. What's
Yes, it's me. Yes.
Okay. One thing I'd suggest is investigate help me out, folks. The chimney effect cooker.
Is that a rocket one?
A what?
A rocket one? A rocket stove?
Or the chimenea, is that what it's called?
No, Liz, we got one. What is it? Can't think of it right now. We got more than one.
The rocket?
Yeah, the rocket. Consider
Okay.
a good rocket stove, because the thing about those is they use very little wood, and just little sticks and twigs that you can pick up if you've got any woods on your place. Or
Basic kindling.
Would a rocket stove work for like a family of 9? I mean, because I have to
probably
put on.
need 2 of them.
Okay.
So you could have two pots going at least. And have you seen those volcano stoves, they call them, that are, you know, basically fancy Dutch ovens with multiple levels?
No, I have not.
Well,
Okay.
that allows you to cook, you know, like 3 or 4 things on each rocket stove. That would be another idea that might be useful in that scenario. Because yeah, cooking's important. You know, if you got food and you can't cook it, it doesn't do you much good. That's the 2 things. But the rocket stove, we've actually got one that's heavy steel that supposedly we haven't done it yet, but supposedly you can on it. We're gonna
Thank you.
try that out one of these days, hopefully. Anyway. And last week, our weed of the day or herb of the day or whatever, we couldn't, I put it in here because I couldn't identify it. And we did get it identified during the week or the next day, I guess, because Mike Johnson had a suggestion from one of his apps that it was a false nettle, kind of like a stinging nettle, but a false nettle, because this one doesn't sting you. And so once I had that and I looked up pictures for it and found exact matches. So it is a false nettle, and I have a lot of it on my place, and it doesn't have any known medicinal properties, but it is a source of food for several varieties of butterflies. So anyway, it's not all bad. No livestock will eat it on my place that I know of. It's kind of a bummer since I have a lot of it. So tonight we're going to play another video about grow what you eat and eat what you grow. And I wanted to show you this quote as you're playing this to think about. And this was from President Marion G. Romney in conference April 5th, 1975. He says, "We will see the day when we will live on what we produce." And that's kind of scary, I think. We produce a lot of our own food, but just depending on it would be kind of scary, I think. So I'll play a video from our buddy in New Jersey, who happens to be in about the
Questions because they can.
We're done. About in the same climate that we're in. And he's going to tell us 10 plants that you can plant in August still and get a harvest. And then we'll talk about other things that could be added to that list or other times of the year. So here we go.
I'm going to share with you 10 crops you need to get planted in August. Let's go! We are in the second half of the growing season, and to find out what we still have time to plant, we need to find when our first expected frost date is. I'm in zone 7A, and my first expected frost date is October 15th. That means I have about 74 frost-free days left to grow. The first expected frost date, that's just a guess or an estimate, but it's a good way to kind of gauge how much time we still have left to plant. I have found that in my location, my first expected frost date, that's usually a little earlier. My actual frost usually comes a little after that. So I always plant in hopes that the frost comes later. Now that I know I have about 75 days till my first expected frost, I can start deciding what I want to get planted into the ground. In August, it's a great time to get some peas planted. In this section back here, I had some beautiful peas planted in the spring. Super productive. I had the sugar snap pea, one of my favorite all-time varieties. I also had some purple peas, the sugar magnolia. The color on them is incredible. Peas are a cold hardy crop, but one of the issues with planting them at this time of year is getting good germination. I have a few tricks for that. The first one is to soak your peas for 24 hours before planting. This will help speed up germination and also give you more consistent sprouting after you plant them out. So we'll just dump this water. Then I'll show you how I plant my peas. Get some peas, just like this. Then I'll go over here. I already made sure that my soil is nice and moist. I'll take my peas, I'll place them 3 inches apart. So at 3 inches, 6 inches, 9 inches, 12 inches, 15 inches. Then I'll go back and I'll gently push them into the soil, making sure I don't damage the pea. Just like this. And then I'll brush over the top of it with some soil. I'll do that the whole way down. And then to help get better consistent germination also, another thing I'll do is I'll use a diced leaf mulch. I'll cover my pea seeds just like this to help the soil retain a good level of moisture. And the peas don't have any problem pushing through this kind of diced leaf mulch. Something like a lettuce has a problem pushing through mulch, but the peas have no issue with it. Another issue that I have had for many years when planting peas is the birds. Let me just get that up. So the birds will come and attack my young pea shoots. To prevent that, I built this pea box and I use this insect netting. I fold over top just like this. This makes it so the birds can't get to my young pea shoots. It allows them to thrive. Also at this time of the year, it's August. I mean, it's hot. I'm out here earlier than usual, and I'm still sweating. So if you have some really hot days when your peas are just starting to sprout, it's a good idea to take a shade cloth, a 40% shade cloth, throw it over top to give your peas a little bit of that filtered sunlight so they can manage through the hot days. Another crop you should get planted in August are actually Tuck's favorite. I'm talking about carrots. Let's grab a carrot here for him, give him a snack. We've got some carrots growing, but we're also going to plant another round of carrots. So when it comes to your carrots, they take about 70 to 80 days on average. So you want to get your carrots in the ground about 2 to 3 months before your first expected frost date. For me, that's right now. We know this guy's looking for a snack. So for me, it's the perfect time to get some carrots into the ground for a fall harvest. Let's see if this guy wants a snack on it. What do you think, boy? This guy's so cute. Now is the perfect time for me to get my carrots into the ground. Something like a cucumber, that will die from a light frost, but carrots, after a frost comes, they actually get sweeter. It brings up the sugar content in the carrots. Even though that brings up the sugar content and a frost can kind of be good for carrots, as the season goes on, the days get shorter, the sun drops lower, and the plants grow slower. So if you don't have that much time left, what I suggest you do is plant a variety of carrots that's quick cropping, like the mokum. This one only takes about 48 days from seed to harvest. A tricky thing about carrots is getting good germination at this time of year, because carrots need about 1 week of consistent moisture on those seeds in order to germinate. The thing is, they don't like to be buried deep, and also they don't like a mulch on top. So to maintain that level of moisture for a week at this time of the year can be a little bit tough, but I have a trick for that known as the carrot board trick. What I do is I plant my carrots 16 per square foot. Then I take this board and cover the carrots with it. After about 5 to 7 days, I'll come out and check if the seeds started to sprout. Once I see those seeds sprouting, I'll remove the board. This allows me to get good, consistent germination with my carrots. The next crop you can plant in August are beets. They typically take about 55 to 70 days to go from seed to maturity. Like carrots, they're relatively cold hardy. Also, like carrots, they can be a bit tricky to get out of the ground at this time of the year because it's so dang hot. So what I suggest you do is soak your beet seeds for about 12 hours before planting. This will speed up the germination process and give you better germination rates overall. So I'll just dump these beets into here. This is how I do it. Then I can grab these beet seeds and plant them. I plant them about 9 beet seeds per square foot. I'll just make the holes like this. It's a quick, easy process. One of the really cool things about beets is they grow late into the season, but not only do you eat them for the roots, but also you could eat the leaves of the beet plants. You could eat up to 1/3 of the leaves on the beet plant, and that won't damage it. So it's like a double crop. We can get the root crop, but we can also eat some of those fresh leaves. This is what makes beets such an incredible plant. And I plant them around the same time as my carrots. So this time of year is perfect. You'll notice I'll throw a few seeds per hole, then cover them up just like this. Because we soak them, the germination process has essentially already begun. August is a great time to get some kale planted. This is my favorite looking and one of my favorite tasting varieties, the dazzling blue kale. When it comes to kale though, there are some super cold hardy varieties. A variety like the red Russian kale and especially the white Russian kale are so cold hardy that I've had them grow throughout the whole year through the cold winter in my location with no covering. Kale is great to plant right now because it doesn't need to head up, you just eat the leaves. So if it comes to something like broccoli, cabbage, or cauliflower, you're cutting it a little bit close if you want to plant it right now. I usually plant my cabbage, my broccoli, my cauliflower in like mid-July so that I can transplant it into the garden in August. If you do want to press your luck though, I suggest you grow quick producing varieties like the early Jersey Wakefield cabbage. This one only takes about like 63 days from seed to harvest. So it's a good one to get planted if you forgot to plant some of your cabbages earlier in like July. So when it comes to starting things like my brassicas, it's still hot outside. I suggest you start them in trays like you see right here. But to help combat the strong sun and to keep your plants from getting leggy, what I like to do is when it's really hot out, I'll take a shade cloth when the sun is really intense and throw it over the top, this 40% shade cloth. What this does is it helps reduce some of the stress on those young brassicas because they don't like the heat that much. Then once they're more established, I'll transplant them into the garden. Another thing at this time of year is the white flies like to go after your young brassica plants. So what I'll do is when I have them out here, I'll just take this insect netting and put this over top. This helps keep the white flies out and some of the other nasty bugs for those brassicas. Then when I transplant them into the garden, if I can't cover them with something like an insect netting, to combat those whiteflies, I'll use either neem oil with some dish soap mixed into it, or you could go with the safer soap. This is an excellent one too. This helps keep the whiteflies at bay, so your plants can grow healthy, happy, and you can get some big harvests late in the season. Another crop you can get planted in August is lettuce. Lettuce is cold hardy. You could start planting your lettuce now and continue planting it up until September. This way you can get continual harvests of lettuce. So dang good, especially late in the season. Winter marble lettuce is a great variety. It's cold hardy, it grows late into the season, and I suggest you get this one planted. When it comes to lettuce, I like starting them in cells like you see here. The reason I do that is because lettuce can be a little tricky to get out of the ground at this time of the year. And unlike carrots, you can't use the carrot board trick for lettuce because lettuce actually needs a little light to germinate. So I suggest planting lettuce in cells and then transplanting that into the garden. Just make sure when you plant your lettuce into the garden, you pick a day where it's either like a little bit cloudy and a little misty rain. If you don't do that and you want to transplant out on a sunny day, just make sure you have a shade cloth. This will help your lettuce adjust to their new home and be able to just thrive once you get them in the ground. In August is when I start getting my spinach planted. Because spinach is so cold hardy, you could plant this later in August also. That's when I suggest you really plant it if you live in a zone like I do. Just like a lot of other crops, spinach can be a little tricky to get good germination at this time of year. When it comes to your spinach, when the soil is really warm, that can actually drop the germination rate of spinach down to like 50% or less. To compensate for this, if you want to direct sow your spinach, what I suggest you do is take your spinach, put it in the freezer for a couple days. Then take it out of the freezer, get a moist paper towel, wrap it in a moist paper towel, and then put that in the fridge. What we're essentially doing is we're mimicking what would happen in nature just naturally in the winter, and then in the spring they would get nice and wet, and that will greatly help increase your germination for your spinach. They're wrapped up in here somewhere. Then you could direct sow your spinach into the ground if you want to direct sow it. You can also just start in cells like I do. This allows me to just start in cells and transplant out. It's an easier thing to do overall, but if you want to start your spinach in the ground, then I suggest you go through this kind of cold treatment before you do that. Spinach is super cold hardy like I mentioned, so what you could do is just throw a little cold frame over your spinach. That'll grow really late into the season, and you could even have some spinach that's still growing heading into spring next year. The next crops you can get planted in August are Asian greens. Some of these are so incredibly cold hardy and delicious, like the bok choy, the pak choy, and also the tatsoi are great choices. The thing is, I want to plant these till a little later in August because they could easily bolt, especially in this heat. They're best to plant in fall rather than in like spring, because if you plant some of these in spring, like the bok choy, that thing really goes to seed really quick once the heat comes. So fall is a great time to plant it so it can thrive heading late into that season. I've had some tatsoi that grew like through the whole entire winter too. They're delicious, they're nutritious, and they're a great choice to have in the garden. If you don't have some massive Swiss chard plants growing in your garden already, August is the great time to get some planted. These things will continue to kick out food late in the season. If you put a cover over it, this thing can continue to produce all year long. I planted this in the spring. It continued to grow through the spring, the summer. It'll grow through fall and into winter. They're incredible plants. When it comes to Swiss chard, if you don't have them growing already, I suggest you start some in trays like this. It's not a tricky plant to grow. It's relatively easy to get germinated. It's easy to grow, and it's a fantastic plant to have in the garden so you could be eating late into the winter. Another crop you can get planted in August are radishes. Radishes are an extremely fast-growing, cold, hardy crop. So now is a good time to start planting some radishes, and then you can continue planting them through like mid-September. Radishes, there are some varieties that grow so fast, like the pink lady slipper. This one
Also, I didn't realize until a year or two ago, you can eat the greens from the radishes. So bear that in mind also.
only takes about 26 days from seed to harvest. Some varieties like the Masato Rose take about 60 days though from seed to harvest. So if you want to grow some of those longer season varieties like the Masato Rose, now would be a good time to start getting them in the ground. The next group of crops you can still plant in August are some cold hardy ones, some of them common, some of them a bit obscure. The first one is arugula. This is a common one. The ice bread arugula is a great one to grow late into the season, a nutty, delicious flavor. Another one that I love growing, I've been growing it for years, is Claytonia, also known as miner's lettuce. This one has a lemony kind of flavor. It grows prolifically. You just kind of plant it and let it do its thing. Another good one is mashi. This has a bit of a nutty flavor. It's not a very common plant, but it's super cold hardy, grows like all winter long. The next one that I really enjoy is red vein sorrel. This one has a beautiful color to it, a good look, and a decent flavor. And another one is Mizuna. Has more of like a peppery flavor. It's in the Brassica family. These are all great ones to get into the ground. They'll grow super late in the season for you. So the majority of these you're going to want to plant later in August, but they're great additions to that winter garden. Me and Tuck wanted to leave you with some bonus ones you could still plant if it's still early in August. We'll let this guy snack on a little bit of a cucumber. We still have some cucumbers left, and we have another round planted already. But if it's super early August for you, you could try to push your luck and get some more cucumbers planted as long as you do it like immediately. Another thing you want to make sure is that you plant varieties of cucumbers now that are quick cropping. For instance, the Socrates cucumber, this one only takes about 52 days from seed to harvest. You don't want to plant something like the painted serpent. This takes about 76 days from seed to harvest. It is important to note though, as I mentioned earlier, as we get later into the season, the sun drops lower, the days get shorter, and the plants grow slower. So you really want to make sure you have about 70 days if you want to plant some cucumbers. You don't want to plant cucumbers if you have 52 days till your frost and they take 52 days. You would really be cutting it close. Another thing you could plant if you want to push your luck are some bush beans, some green beans. So something like the Royal Burgundy bush bean that only takes about 53 days. You can plant something like that. You don't want to plant like the yard long bean. That thing takes like 70, 80, maybe 90 days. So it takes a long time to grow. You can see I have some cucumbers popping up, also some squash. I'll try to push my luck with over here. And I still have more squash and cucumbers that I planted a few weeks ago. If you want to push your luck with the squash, you want to grow a quick producing variety like the Y-Star bicolor patty pan squash. This one only takes about 48 days from seed to harvest. You don't want to grow something like the Zucchino rampicante. That takes about 76 days from seed to harvest. When it comes down to it, understanding how many days you have left to grow and understanding that not every crop like not every cucumber takes the same length of time. There's a big gap. So like cucumbers are about 50 usually to 70 days and even past that. So you want to make sure you're growing varieties that produce quick if you're going to try to get a quick harvest before that frost comes. Use that expected frost date as a guidepost and it'll help you understand what you still have time to plant no matter what zone you're in. That's today's video, growers. Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed it. We hope you got something out of it. Me and Tuck hope that we brought you value in this video. We hope we gave you some ideas of what you could plant, but we hope that we also kind of educated you just a little bit on how to find out what you have time to plant with, no matter what zone you're in. You may be in a different zone than me, but it's the same kind of idea of how to find out what to plant. Count your days, find out how long something takes, and give yourself a little bit of a buffer on each side, unless you're going to grow some of those super cold hardy crops.
Okay. So, did you think of anything else that we should plant in August? I said, I was talking about was the field peas versus the English peas. And there's probably still some herbs that could go in if you got limited space and need something to supplement maybe food storage or whatever. I would start out with planting herbs because I keep a little patch of oregano by the front door, and I use that usually at least once a day through, and it grows through most of the year. You know, it's probably January and February I may not get any, but that's about it really. So and the other thing that we tend to not think of is animals. We're not limited. Well, depending on where you live, you may be limited to vegetables, but a lot of us can grow animals to supplement our production. So any other thoughts? Okay. That's about all I've got, but in general, it's easier to grow animals on your place than it is to grow vegetables. As you know, we've got right now we've got and sometimes the storage is easier. You know, we've got probably a 5 or 6 year supply of pork on the hoof right now, if anybody's interested. Liz, were you trying to say something?
Just that I had a thought of mushrooms might be another thing that could be put in, wouldn't it be? If anybody had logs and wanted to put the spores in.
Yeah, that could still be done. You need to have green logs that were recently cut, but other than that, it should work fine.
But mushrooms have a fairly high protein value also, generally.
Yeah, they're right up there with hamburger meat, over 20% protein. And if you dry them in the sunlight, not indoors in a dehydrator, but if you dry them in the sunlight, they produce a lot of vitamin D. So something to be aware of, especially if you were eating what you produced and you might not have access to vitamin D from other sources, high protein and vitamin D. Well, if nobody has anything else to say, that should about do it for tonight. Thank everybody for coming out, and see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you, Winston.
You're welcome.